I think the fact that we pretty much, for the most part, could do anything we wanted to get the information. Like when we went into somebody's house, we're not knocking. The wife and the kids, we weren't hurting. If you're a full-grown male and we had intel on you, bad stuff was going to happen. We couldn't get away with stuff like the Polish Grom. They're different ROEs. I was kind of envious of those guys, but at the same time, I think my biggest struggle was a simple fact that I thrived in that environment.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Resilient, where we champion the pursuit of strength, adaptability, and courage in the face of adversity. Like all our guests, today's definitely fits that definition. We have Navy SEAL, entrepreneur, government contractor. The man goes by many titles. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, bro. I appreciate you being here. Yeah, thanks for making the drive. You're just outside of San Antonio, is that right?
Yeah, about 35 minutes outside of San Antonio.
Nice. I love San Antonio, man. We're going to take a trip up there pretty soon. Me and the family.
Are you?
Yeah.
I avoid San Antonio as much as possible. So if you're
you probably don't love it. Yeah.
If you're in the hill country and you want to come hang out and live in peace, you can come by.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely do that. Yeah, we go down, we do the water walk, the boardwalk thing and go to the Alamo and, you know, do the cool stuff with the kids, you know, so we're going to do that coming up. But man, I want to cover a lot today. Obviously want to cover, you know, your story of resiliency. You know, that's what this show is all about. Just kind of pushing back on the weakness we see in the world today, highlighting stories of, you know, resilient experiences from people like yourself. But I want to start, really from, you know, the beginning, like even before you became a SEAL. I mean, what was it like? I mean, how did you end up in that path? What was it like for you as a kid? Why was the SEAL track your track?
You know, I didn't fully understand it until probably about 4 years ago, but I had a good life up to about 5. My dad, they pretty much lived on alcohol from 5 a.m., tomato juice, Budweiser, and drank from the time they got up and from the time they went to bed. Really good dad, never abused us, never yelled at us, took us on trips. You know, they'll tell you that people cannot be a functioning alcoholic. You know, he was a true functioning alcoholic at the level that he was at. But when he was called to be better, he just couldn't cope with it. He was a Vietnam vet.
Wow.
Probably dealt with a lot of issues, included killing. His first kill was a woman, an innocent woman that they pretty much forced him to shoot on a bike that was getting too close to the MP gates.
Wow.
To the base. And he never really talked about it. I heard from my mom on that one. But overall, you know, he provided for us. He took us on trips and just amazing father. And then 1981, we moved to Texas during the oil boom, and our whole family moved, and nieces and nephews and everybody. They wanted to get in on the, you know, the oil money.
Yeah.
And my uncle's nephew, he got in a really bad accident. He ran his car up under a flatbed semi, and my dad, being my dad, you know, he took him in. You know, my mom started taking care of him, and you know, eventually, you know, adultery happened in the home. And I remember going down the hallway and it was just pitch black, and there was just something about it. I didn't understand it. Had no idea what sex was at that age. I was probably 7. And I just remember looking at the door, and she's sitting there on the bed, you know, not doing anything, but just the position and the things that they were saying. I knew something wasn't right. So that ended up happening. They ended up getting divorced, and he ended up being very, very abusive. I mean, just very toxic, and my life pretty much turned upside down at that point.
Who is this that's abusive at this point?
It was my uncle's nephew.
Okay.
You know, took some time, but they ended up getting married. But the abuse on her and, you know, animals, and, you know, I would come home from being with my dad, and my whole room would be tore up, and she would blame it on the dog. You know, pretty much the only friend I had was a dog and my sister. And later on, I found out that he went in there with a shotgun and shot the house up. You know, just, you're talking, we had like one little Cracker Jack toy to our name, and he would destroy everything we had. And it was just a very toxic environment overall, very poor. You know, we had to go to my aunt's house to eat a lot of the times. A lot of times we didn't have electricity, didn't have a car. I would get up and go to school and everything would be fine under the certain circumstances. And come home, lights would be shut out, electricity would be off, everything would be boxed up, and they would be running from the monthly payment. And then I would have to switch schools. So when all this started happening, the natural response for a kid who has nobody is to, you know, become a recluse and hide and just go into survival mode. And that's when I started getting bullied. It was like people can pick up on that and they start targeting you.
Yeah.
And I didn't like to fight. I didn't want to deal with any of that stuff. And in about the 7th grade, there were 2 guys in gym class that started fighting. And then one of my good friends, he started mouthing off to me just jokingly. And I just flipped and I jacked him up. And he was a big dude. He pinned me down and the bell rang and then we got up and left. You know, to this day, that's the only person I've never found to be able to apologize.
Wow.
You know.
What's this guy's name?
His name is Robert. I don't remember his last name, but super nice guy. It wasn't his fault.
There's an apology, Robert, right there.
Yeah. And not for the fighting, obviously. Not for the I beat you up. It was like I allowed, you know, my home front to hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
And it wasn't good. But, you know, I remember one time we were sitting outside and we had this gremlin, a forest green gremlin. You remember that little car? Looked like a little spaceship, just a big old bubble.
Okay.
And with an engine, big old glass on the back and the sides. And me and my dude.
You had a Ford Pinto.
Did you?
Did you remember the Pintos?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah.
Not far off from that, a little bit bigger, if I'm not mistaken. And we were all sitting outside, the friends of this apartment that we lived in. And this guy comes by and he, you know, pulls up and he jumps out of the car and he comes over there and slashes the valve stem. And he jumps in the car and he takes off. And I'm like, crap. And everybody knew it was our car. So we went and told Mom and her husband. And they came outside. Well, about that time, the guy circles back around. Well, they had been hiding the car, you know, from the repo guy. And that's who it was. It was a repo guy. So it was like, man, it was just one thing after another. But just how sadistic that individual was, you know, we all lived in the same, you know, room in an apartment. And he would sit there at night and just pinch the dog and pinch my mom and make them scream in the middle of the night. Just wake up in the middle of the night, start doing it. Just sick.
Yeah, this is.
And I didn't realize that we as kids, we were designed to be protectors, you know, until, like I said, a couple years ago. There was a moment where it happened, you know, in the middle of the night again, and I don't know exactly what was going on, but we had this hallway, me and my sister get up, and he's sitting there on the couch, and him and my mom are arguing, and she's kind of in the beginning of the hallway. And he gets up, and he starts walking towards her, and I'm scared to death. I couldn't be 7 years old. And I was like, you leave her alone. And I'm sure I was cussing. And I got in front of my mom. Well, he grabs this crescent wrench, and he comes at me. And I, pardon my French, I bitch out. I run behind my mom, and I'm squealing and crying. And, you know, that was probably the moment that I feel, or a major moment, that my masculinity was taken away from me. And I never knew.
At 7 years old.
Yeah. You know, I couldn't protect. My dad wasn't there to protect. And sorry.
No, it's all right, man. That's a heavy thing for a child, man.
You know, I didn't understand when we go through divorces and stuff, how we leave our kids to be that protector of the home, and they can't do crap, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd end up doing that same thing. Coming back screwed up, thinking I had it all figured out, toxic as crap. But, you know, sorry. For me, I know a lot of people who's been through a lot of worse, and I worked through my ministry with a lot of people, and they're like, man, you had to go through a lot. And I was like, no, you actually went through more, and you're in a better place than I am, you know. And I think it just ties into how God makes us. And my heart was just softer than most people. And that moment is what did it for me. It's what broke me. And years pass, still working through it as a teenager. I come home. I think it was about 1999, maybe 90. No, it was about 98. And my high school sweetheart, my mom, and my stepdad were just glued to the TV in the corner. I had a good life at that point. I was working to be an electrician in a journeyman school and a union. Life was looking good, but I was still dealing with my own issues, and I needed that approval from someone that wasn't giving it to me. And I walk in, and this TV, they're glued to it, and I can hear them talking. And I shut the door, and I'm like, "What are y'all watching?" They're like, "The first documentary of the Navy SEALs that was released." And I remember this big dude. He's grabbing this 55, horsepower engine off a sub, and he's carrying it. And just by the way they were talking, I was like, I've never heard them talk like that before. And I said, I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL. And they turned around and just busted out laughing.
Look out.
Now, keep in mind at that time, I just went to the gym. I was a dope head. There was nothing in me that separated me from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So understandable. But that was one of my driving forces to do that. And I found out many years later, like I said, about a couple years later, 3 or 4 years ago, one of the subconscious things was the fact that when I saw that on TV, to me, there was nothing more powerful than a Navy SEAL, because of the way they were talking and, the training that they went through. And I felt that I needed that for me, to ensure no one ever stripped my power away from me again.
Yeah.
And I didn't, when I found that out, I was like, man, there's no way that's true. But went and signed up the next week, went into the delayed entry program for 9 months. I wanted to make absolute sure that if I didn't make it, it was due to an injury. And went in, and the rest is history.
Look out, man. Man, that is, I think people don't often realize, I come from a broken home, not near like the trauma of your story, but people don't realize how much the impact of a divorce and a broken home can impact our children. It really does. It really does cause a rift. And now as an adult, I look back and I see some things in my life that I was like, man. And this is not about like pointing blame or being the victim. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about recognizing something that actually impacted us. And this is what I love is, and we're going to get into your story more later, but it's you recognize like, hey man, this is an issue and it's okay that this is an issue, but I have to find a solution to work through this, And, I think we internalize things, we trap them, we lock them up, especially coming from our communities, police officers and military guys, because we feel like we're not supposed to,
Yes.
Be able to cry in front, right, of people, but man, it's the most powerful thing in the world is to actually take a hold of your emotion and realize the impact that it has on you. And then make some adjustments and actions in your life that can help set you up for success.
Yeah, I think we live in a world, like you said, that's really attacking, and as a Christian, the devil is influencing people. You don't need to be an emotional person. You're a man. God gave you emotions to be able to navigate through life. Now, the problem is us not having control of those emotions and letting them just get out of control and controlling our life. If we go through a breakup, I'm going to go drink, I'm going to the bars, I'm dealing with this.
Yeah.
So it is important to have that father figure in the home to teach us these things. But the truth is, even most men that are in the homes are not present.
Yeah.
They're not emotionally, they're not spiritually present to their family. And it's just as toxic as them not being there. Because now you're teaching them what a man is. And on my YouTube channel, people are like, stop saying feeling. You're a man, you're a former Navy SEAL, you shouldn't have feelings. It's like, man, your home life must suck.
Yeah.
I bet your wife is
Miserable.
very unhappy and miserable with who you are as a man, and it's toxic. And there's a balance of, the way I look at it is, women will tell men, why can't you be, emotional? And then you have these men break down and crying in front of the women, and the women, they're turned off by it. They want to see vulnerability.
Yeah.
They don't want to see us being crybabies, because what a woman is doing when they ask us these questions is they're gauging where they are in life. Because a woman's vision is the future. What does my life hold? What does our life hold? Where are we going? What direction? When a man can show vulnerability, she can gauge the future for her family. But when a man comes in and he's bawling and squalling every time he turns around because he thinks that's what she wants to see, it's a major turnoff, and she'll never see you the same way. So there's a balance between being emotional and vulnerable and having that under control.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I swear almost every episode we go into this because I'm so passionate about it here at Resilient, just talking about resilient parents, and especially like you were highlighting the roles of the man. The role of the man is to protect and lead the family, and you can't do that if you're not present. And, coming from law enforcement, I mean, 90%, I'd probably say more, I'm just throwing out a number, of the people that I dealt with that were true bad actors didn't have a father at home, and the mother's trying her best, but she she doesn't have that, it's designed to be a mother and a father for a reason. Yeah. And when you break that design, things start to crumble. And so, man, I love this message of really calling men to actually lead in home and to be present. And, no matter what we accomplish outside of the home, it means nothing if we're not leading at home.
Yeah.
As a SEAL, as a police officer, as a professional fighter, as an entrepreneur, like our accolades that we gather outside the home, if we're not actually doing the work in the home, then those mean nothing,
Yeah. Learning how to do it has been the challenge.
Yeah.
Once you recognize it, the journey to figuring out how to do all that is crazy.
Yeah.
A lot of trials and errors, but when you start seeing things work over time, it's very rewarding. I think a big issue that we have is kind of like counseling, right? You'll see people go into counseling and, man, it's going to work, and they go home and they try something where there's still resentment there. And when I communicate with you properly now and you don't give me the response that I think, well, it's not working, I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
There's no resilience there.
Yeah.
If I truly believe something works and is right, I continue to do it because I know eventually the reward is going to come, until the day you die. That's what it means, man.
Yeah. Well, I think there's this terrible, opinion about marriage. Nobody treats marriage like they treat anything else. Like if you want to be good, if I want to be a good fighter, I train all the time to be a good fighter. You want to be a good marksman, we got to go shoot all the time to be a good marksman. Yeah. We want to be good at tactics and clearing homes. You got to go to work. You got to practice all the time. We don't practice in our marriage. Living together is not practice. That's not real work. That's, that'd be like going in a shooting house and sitting in the shoot house, but not doing any of the work. That's what living together is in marriage. People don't do the real work,
Yeah. I look at it as, it has to be very intentional.
Yeah.
You look at God and his creation, even the human body, right? If I cut myself, the blood coagulates. But when I breathe in, the oxygen goes into the lungs, gets into the bloodstream. Why doesn't it coagulate inside of us? Because it's perfectly designed to operate. So there has to be an intelligent approach and a very intentional approach in our marriage and our relationship. So you just can't just wing it and just go in there and hang out with your kids. There has to be
strategy.
Yeah,
I call it the tactician's mindset.
Yeah, 100%.
I was telling somebody about the other day, like a tactician is somebody who creates a specific strategy to achieve a specific end. And you have to do that in your marriage. You got to do that when you're, as a parent, you got to do that in your job, and so you have to go through life. Call it what you want. I call it the tactician's mindset, but some type of strategy and how to be successful in whatever it is you're doing.
I read a study not long ago. It's as we stop educating ourselves, part of the brain shuts down. And over time, the neural pathways actually start breaking and dying. And it's very hard to rewire our brain to operate in a mind where we can learn. And I think that's a big issue that we have in the world is most men don't live in a continuing education mindset. As soon as they get out of high school, they're just on autopilot. Very few people go to college, and then there's, like you're saying, I'm getting out learning new things such as shooting or, bowling. It can be whatever you want. You need to keep your brain active to where those neural pathways don't die. And what I've learned is on the shooting range is people who live in a continuing education mindset pick things up very quickly, whereas those who just are on autopilot, they make the most mistakes because they're just doing what they've taught the body to do over the years.
Yeah,
which is usually very dangerous.
Yeah, because there's no challenge. There's I'm going to get the name wrong. I think it's the intermandibular cortex. I forget. It's a part of your brain that actually only grows if you challenge it. It literally, it does not grow unless it perceives challenge. And it has to be something that you recognize as hardship, and then you do it anyways. And, we're lacking that in today's world. Men don't challenge as each other as much as they don't challenge themselves as much as we used to have to, because we live in such a convenient world.
If you're watching and wondering what I'm holding here, this beautiful piece of equipment, this is the Smith & Wesson Volunteer. It's one of my favorite firearms from Smith & Wesson. And I am a proud ambassador of Smith & Wesson firearms. I have been a lifelong fan of Smith & Wesson. They are one of the most iconic American companies, have been around for 170 years, making the best firearms, Second Amendment focused. And I love the people there. This from the CEO to the vice president that have become personal friends of mine. They are supporters of our military and first responder communities. In fact, they are supporters of Mighty Oaks, which makes them the premier sponsor of this show. And if you are in the market for one of the best firearms out there, then whether it's a rifle, a pistol, for whatever reason, for hunting, for self-defense, you need to get yourself a Smith & Wesson. You can't go wrong with Smith & Wesson. The quality, the craftsmanship, and the company itself is no way you go wrong. So check out Smith & Wesson and get yourself one of the most iconic American firearms you get your hands on. Smith & Wesson, my go-to, and a proud supporter of Mighty Oaks and our military and first responder communities. All right, guys, want to thank one of our show sponsors. By the way, all the sponsors for Resilience are supporters of Mighty Oaks for our military and first responder communities. No better one than Gators. Gators has been serving the military and first responder communities with the most incredible American-made eyewear for 35 years. Lifetime frames. Before I got involved with them professionally, I wore Gators all over the world through military operations. The ballistic lenses are something I really believe in. The aluminum frames, just the clarity of the lenses, their polarization. I wore them for skydiving because they have a polarized lens that allows you to see digital screens. And so for skydiving, shooting, you name it, all the crazy activities I do, I wore Gators. And then now I'm blessed to be in a relationship with them, and they're an amazing partner for Mighty Oaks. The best eyewear out there. Again, lifetime frame, American made, 35 years of service to our military and first responder communities. There is no better eyewear out there than Gators, and they look super cool. So I love mine, and get yourself some.
But man, speaking of challenge, I want to keep moving on into the journey to become a SEAL. So you see that commercial. You're like, man, I'm gonna go become a SEAL. So the next day or the next week you're in the recruiter's office?
Next week.
Okay. So you're in the next week you're in the recruiter's office, and you walk in, and what's the story?
So I said, I want to be a SEAL. And he just kind of looked at me. He goes, okay. I dropped out of high school, so I had to take the entry test and show my ASVAB scores and all that nonsense that I passed. And then he gives me this security test. He's like, I want you to be honest on all of these questions. I said, cool, I can do that. And I got to the drug part. And he's like, have you ever smoked marijuana? I'm like, yep. He goes, how often? Once a week, twice a week, 3 times a day. And I did the most. And then he got it, and he's like, gosh, dog, what did you do that for? Now I got to go get you a waiver. So then he had to go ask somebody to get me a waiver, and we refilled it out. And I was like, dude, you told me to be honest with you. He goes, let me walk you through this.
Look out.
And real nice guy, but he's a car salesman. Recruiters are. And like I said, showed up 9 months, worked my butt off, and we're talking about strategy. I knew that I wanted this so bad that I had to create a strategy that wasn't going to fail. and that was train. So I went home. He didn't give me any guidance. All he told me is like, yeah, if you get on the ship, you're going to go into these ports and there's going to be all these women. And I was like, dude, I don't want to hear about this. It's like, teach me how to train. So I bought a book about 3/4 inch thick, nothing but pictures, obviously, of how to be a Navy SEAL or Navy SEAL training, black and white. And I just started incorporating that on a daily basis. And, I basically quit working for the most part full time, and I worked minimal, just to pay bills and food and stuff, gas. And I did nothing but train. That's all I wanted. That's all I could think, I think it's one of those things when you want something bad enough, you'll know, because your whole life changes.
So what was that training like? I mean, like walk us through how you prepped.
So I got up about 5 o'clock in the morning. I went and ran 6 miles. I try to get down to an 8-minute pace. That's what they recommend, 8:30, being able to maintain that. And then I went to the gym after that. I did 400 push-ups, 400 dips, 400 sit-ups, 400 pull-ups, and then ran 1.5 miles on the treadmill at a slower pace. And then I went to work some days or 3 times a week, and then I would go to the Olympic-sized pool, swim the breaststroke 1.5 miles, because they didn't have any information on the side stroke at the time.
Stroke, yeah.
Yeah, there was nothing out there. It's like, just do the breaststroke.
Yeah.
So I was a swimmer in high school.
Oh.
I was pretty dang good at it. So it was pretty easy for me. Then I would go home, rest, and eat. Then at about 5, 6 o'clock, I'd go back to the gym, and I'd do my weight routine, which is 8 to 12, sets, 6 to 8 reps of, upper body, lower body.
Yeah.
And I definitely overtrained. I was 163 pounds soaking wet when I went into SEAL training. I was little.
Look out.
Yeah. I was probably I wasn't the shortest, but I was probably one of the lightest guys in training. And what was interesting is my stepdad got up and he started running with me every day, and we had to start off real slow. But he was a big reason why I continued.
Oh yeah,
just the support.
Yeah. Okay, so you're getting trained, you're getting geared up. I mean, how was it back then? Are you on a SEAL track? I mean, how you go in there? Do you just go to boot camp, and then how does that work?
Man, you just go to normal boot camp. Now they have it separated. Like if you're going to go to SEAL training, you go to your own division.
Yeah.
So in Chicago, I hit it when it was snowing. So I went to boot camp and I asked the RDCs, I said, do you mind if I have a SEAL challenge? Because I wasn't going to go without the stamp that says I'm guaranteed an opportunity to go to BUD/S if I maintain all the grades and stuff. And every morning I would get up, I would take a shower, I would walk about 1.5 miles to where the SEALs trained every morning. And I would walk 1.5 miles back, just frozen to death. We would literally get in the pool every day. And by the time I get back, I'm digging ice out of my hair. I would get back in time for everybody to wake up and hit chow. That stuff was a regular, Navy training is very comical, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's probably some of the worst training in the military. Hopefully they've definitely increased it, but, just carried on with the day. The very first day, my stomach was so irritated and nervous. We went to the chow hall, and I'm like, yo, I got to go to the bathroom bad. I mean, I was holding it. So they're like, yeah, I go down, back here, da-da-da-da. And I come back, and all the trays are cleaned off the table, and my division was outside. I'm like, man, I'm a breakfast guy. I had to have breakfast or I couldn't function.
Yeah.
And needless to say, that was the last time I took a potty break during breakfast or any type of meal. I was like, there is no way, man. I'm a fast eater, but they made these kids like shovel this down their throat. And it was a good learning lesson.
So what's the transition from boot camp to SEAL training?
So from there, I basically, we talk about strategy. I knew there was a possibility that I would get hurt. I knew that I'd already made up my mind. Either I'm going to die or I'm going to make it or get hurt and get kicked out and have to return. So since I'd already been an electrician out of the military, or on my way to an electrician, an apprentice, I actually said, you know what, let me get into these A schools. So I applied for the A schools. It was very easy for me. I was actually fortunate enough that the instructors saw my skill set at that, and they allowed me to help teach some of the classes during the practicals and stuff. So I did that for 9 months.
Okay.
I did that for 9 months in Illinois as well. And then I was still with my high school sweetheart. She packed up and, went to San Diego with me, and we got an apartment, and the rest is history. It was a good journey, but it was crazy.
Yeah. So let's, man, I'd love to dive into, some of the buds training, some of the actual training. Is Hell Week, what, is it the monster that people claim it is?
Yeah. You talk about resilience. That's all it is. I think we started with 165 people. We ended with 35, something like that. Usually if you get to day 3, you're going to make it because you're just zombied out. You're just zoned out.
Yeah.
You just don't care. I mean, you're talking holes in you, just from the salt water and the sand and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Your feet are so swollen. You can't you take your shoes off, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You take your boots off, you're done. You're most likely not going to get them back on after about 5 or 10 minutes. But it's brutal. We got to a point to where we understood that no matter what we do, how good we perform, we're going to get beat.
Yeah.
You're going to get beat. There is nothing going to be comfortable here. And once you realize that that's the outcome, you just stop worrying about stuff and you just go evolution by evolution. If you think about tomorrow, you're not going to make it. What's next?
Yeah.
What's the next hour look like? One more hour. One more hour. And what I found is the people who were very arrogant and prideful, tried to isolate themselves like they were better than everybody else. Those are the first ones to go. That camaraderie. When you're wanting to quit, that person's next to you and he sees it and he's like, nope, come on. I only wanted to quit one time. It split second. We were in the bay, and the tides that came in and the slopes of the sand were pretty steep. And they were waiting for the water to come in. They're like, back, and you would go back and the water would come over you and it hit your nose and you're gagging.
Look out, man.
Probably about 45 minutes into it, this thought hit me. I'm like, you know what? I could quit. I could go to the fleet, I could train and come back in 2 years. And then this vision of me having to go, ego and pride, that's all it was at that time, was me having to go home and look people in the face and say I failed and I quit intentionally. And then it was just a split second. It gave me this jolt of energy, and that was the only time I wanted to quit. And it wasn't even the fact that the water was running up my nose, because I was very comfortable in the water. It was just everything compiled together. It was miserable. Just looking back at it, it's hard to believe a human can go through that type of training.
Yeah. How much do you guys get to sleep during that week?
If you want to call it sleep, you're lucky about 45 minutes, and it's only at one point. I think it's on, if I remember right, I think it's on Thursday. They basically have the tents up, and you go and lay in the cots, and you're watching everybody, and they're just your hip flexors.
There's no way
up.
No way to actually sleep.
Yeah, you're not sleeping. You're just, I don't know what you are, but then they come in there with the bullhorns and scream at you about 45 minutes later, and you hit the ocean again. So I remember a guy on one of the documentaries, he's like, is this, Hell Week? I think they just say that to scare you. And I just busted out laughing. I was like, man, you're not going to make it. But, in boot camp, I had a lot of friends who had the SEAL challenge. They had the stamp. And when they came to A school, I would go work out every day. I found one of my really good friends. He's still a good friend of mine today. And I would stop by the lounge and tell my friends, put that damn pizza down and come work out with us. And before we phased up, some of these guys showed up, and the instructors were like, you, go get them dialed on the obstacle course. And these guys were so out of shape, they couldn't even get over like the first wall. And they didn't even get to phase up. So, man, I look them in the face. I told you, put that damn pizza down and come work out.
How many phases are there? 3 phases?
3 phases.
3 phases,
Technically
right?
4.
Okay.
In a pre-phase when you come in. They change it even when Hell Week is. When we got into fourth phase, before we actually phased up, Lieutenant Scop, they were in the pool doing the centipede. So basically, you wrap your legs around the guy in front of you, and your arms are what keeps you afloat.
Look out.
I think he had pulmonary edema, fluid on the heart or something like that. They thought they had it under control, but his heart exploded and sank to the bottom. So Hell Week was actually the third week instead of the fourth. Well, they changed it and bumped it up to the fourth. So it varies a little bit. Last I heard, they actually switched it to the fifth at some point. I could be wrong, but I don't keep up with any of that.
I mean, you hear about these deaths. I mean, people die in Hell Week sometimes. I mean, that's accurate.
Oh, 100%. Outside of Extortion 17, up to that point, there were more deaths in training than in combat for the SEAL community.
Wow.
Diving and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
It's fun, but I look back at it and think, man, we were stupid.
Yeah.
Young and dumb,
Yeah.
We really searched for that thrill, and we didn't really comprehend how dangerous the things that we were doing really were.
So what is it? So what's it like to be done and graduate? What does that look like to finish?
There was one of the instructors, he said, you may have a Trident, but in our eyes, you're still not a SEAL. So they always did stuff like that. They would celebrate, and then they would bring us back down to reality.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
understood it. And so our ego and pride couldn't get there. When we showed up, we were like, instructor so-and-so, and they're like, put that crap down. You're in the teams now. I'm not your instructor. I'm your teammate. So there was an acceptance there, but there was also an understanding of who we were and our position at the time, that we haven't even scratched the surface of proving that we deserve to be a SEAL. And kind of go back, in third phase, 9/11 happened. 9/11 happened.
Oh,
and that
yeah.
really changed my view on what it meant to be a SEAL when I saw the camaraderie and the instructors and people falling from the buildings, because one of my thought processes were I want to prove that I can be a SEAL. So when I get my Trident, because that's what it meant to be a SEAL my understanding, I'm just going to serve my time and get out. I was young, arrogant, had no idea, but when 9/11 happened, it really changed my thought process. And I went from, I'm just going to get my Trident to, okay, I understand, to a higher level of what it means to be a SEAL and to sacrifice yourself, and I'm ready for it.
Look out, man. So I mean, what kind of stories you got for out in the field? I'm sure you got any funny stories. You got any? I mean, we hear the combat stories, but what kind of funny stuff you got, man? What's
like we talked about. I went through this phase of telling stories, and then God told me one day, he goes, no more. And he kind of laid it on my heart that it was a form of self-glorification. And he's like, it's not about you. So I can tell you some stories. Probably the scariest and funniest time that I had, we were, I can't tell you where we went.
Yeah.
But I love flying on the side of a helo. We had the doors open. I'm hanging out of it with my gun. We're flying about 50, 60 feet above, the top of the buildings. And it was snowing. It was freezing outside for about 2 hours. And I was numb. So we were supposed to go hit a arms dealer. And so we get to where we were supposed to be going. They land us about 250 yards away from the structure out in this flat field. And I get out because I'm the first guy, and I started to move, and everything just locks up. And I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, yeah, I'll catch up with y'all. Just go. And I'm over here beating on my legs. And it took a long time to get my footing back and get back into the fight. But we cleared this compound, and our overall goal was to find the weapons. And we had to cut, since they were farmers, we had to cut every bag of seed they had. And I'm talking hundreds of them. And so we secured everything, and then they sent the search parties out. I was part of one of the search parties that was going to go to one section of the compound. And I come in this room, and I swear the biggest chicken jumps down on my head. It was about twice the size of an American turkey. And you ever been scared where you just want to choke the life out of something? I almost shot him. I took my gun off safe and I was like, you know what? No, I can't do that. I'm going to get in trouble. You know, if I could have caught that thing, I would have ripped his head off. It scared me to death. But once I kind of regained my composure, I was laughing. But that was probably the funniest time that I had. Another one was we had this one guy. His name was Isham. Isham. Well, we had fun with that guy, interrogating him. So this guy, on the compound we were at up in Mosul, we're right across from Mosul, about a mile, a little more of the Tigris River. So every day, every Tuesday, I believe, is when they got paid, he would come out with a rocket, and he would send a rocket over the Tigris River into our compound. So apparently he bought one that didn't work so well. So the CH-60s are actually hovering, and they saw him a few days, prior to what he did. So he calls the Army on the base and says, hey, my name is so-and-so. I want to turn an arms dealer. I'm the one who tried to shoot your helicopters down or launch a rocket into the compound.
Yeah.
And he was ticked off at the arms dealer because he sold him one that malfunctioned. So we pretty much, went over there and blew the doors off the hinges and took him and everything he had. And he had this little geo tracker. I bet you remember those in the 90s.
Yeah.
Little soft top geo tracker. So we hot wired that, took it back to use it. And about a week later, his wife calls and says, yeah, you guys took my car. I have no way to go grocery shopping. We had to plan a full mission, 2 hours there, 2 hours back, and put ourselves at risk to take this woman's vehicle back there.
No way.
Yeah, we're like, there's no way you're serious about this. It's like, man, send the Army. They've got more resources. But we planned it out and we did it. And what was really interesting is I was driving and the guy, Intel rep, was in the passenger seat. I was like, dude, did you put gas in this? No, I thought you did. And we're like, crap. And we're like a quarter of a tank at that point. And when I tell you, we turned the last corner before we reached their house and it died, legit, we coasted in and put it in park. I was like, holy crap.
You got a hand-delivered geo tracker from the Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
Look out. That's the only person that has that story.
Yeah. But what I found interesting was the fact that he allowed his anger to manifest so much, he'd put his family at risk to turn in someone that gave him a faulty rocket.
Yeah.
I was like, are you really that stupid? And I was like, yeah, I guess he was,
Yeah.
But I guess he thought we were just going to come over and, write down some stuff on some paper and take a report and come back. But we jacked him up.
So I can imagine quite a bit of interrogations. Any hard to crack guys? Any guys that were just tough?
Yeah, there was a couple of them.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they portray the actual hardcore terrorists. There's a small percentage out there.
Yeah.
Compared to the populace, or the population in general. But every now and then you would run across one that would require special attention. I can't go into detail, but the compound that we had for interrogation set up was, it was, I didn't want no part of it.
Yeah.
I love being out there. I love interrogating, being part of that team. But what we put those guys through to get the information was horrible. And what was that big knockdown drag out where the pictures came out years ago? What prison was that? I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I just watched an interview on it. Yeah.
That was a joke. I'll tell you that.
Oh.
Yeah. It was very light. Not even comparable to the things that happened to a lot of the guys.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was one. He would look you in the face and he said, if I wasn't handcuffed, I would cut your head off right here. And we pretty much almost had to drown him.
Look out.
We put him in this 6-foot circular cylinder thing. We dug a hole, put ice water in it. And mind you, it's snowing and sleet and you're talking 20 degrees outside.
Yeah.
And, he just would not give up. And finally, he had his fingers on the rail, and I just stomped on his head, and I held him under and held him under and held him under and held him under. And he came up and he's like, all right, I'll tell you. And then they pulled him out and he went to somebody else and we got what we wanted.
Yeah.
Some of these guys are hardcore and they're definitely willing to die. I do know one, it was we didn't get the opportunity for this guy, but they did some pretty extensive stuff to him and they couldn't crack him. And somebody, good cop, bad cop kind of mindset, they were like, you know what, let's try this. So they go get him a McDonald's hamburger and play a Spider-Man movie, and he told them everything.
Look out, dude. Get out of here, man.
So there's nothing
it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing off the, that's
nothing
not
off
on
the table. Yeah.
That we can't use.
Yeah.
You gotta, sometimes we would come up and be like, hey man, look, I want to help you out, but you got to give us what we want because, my buddy over here, the only thing that's keeping him from hurting you is, me right now. And when I leave here in a few minutes, it's bad news for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, people, there could be people out hearing their stories like, oh my gosh, I can't believe these guys did that. But I don't understand. We're talking about, we're talking about national security. We're talking about the lives of countless Americans.
I always hear people, they're intrigued by it. And especially when I put on classes, they're like, are you going to tell us a story? Because everybody, that's military. They love telling stories.
Yeah, they love telling stories. Yeah.
It's like, and I kind of give them this phrase that I use, and they look at me like, you're sick. I was like, but don't you want to hear the truth? You want to know how we beat people and shove crap up their butt? That's been going on for centuries and, millennia. Like in Vietnam, they took pictures with their cutting the Viet Cong's head off. It's like, what do you think war is?
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I struggle even talking. It's like, if you want to know the truth, I'll tell you the truth. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and tell you what I want to tell you. I'm going to tell you the whole truth. And then you're going to think less of me because you don't comprehend these are the things that we have to do. Everybody wants to be a warrior until it's time to sign that dotted line.
And go to war.
It screws you up.
Yeah. Yeah, you shared about that, and I think it's powerful that you've been open about the trauma of your combat experience. So I want to talk about that a little bit, if you're okay with that. Just kind of dealing with that, coming back, and obviously becoming a Christian at some point. We can talk about that, but just coming back with the trauma of the stuff that you're dealing with and what you did over there, knowing that it was necessary, but no doubt you're carrying, an extensive amount of trauma for things that were done. So
I think a lot of it has to do, for me personally, is I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That was my struggle when I came back, is I really, really enjoyed it. And I didn't understand it until I came to Christ that, wow, I'm screwed up. I think the fact that we pretty much, for the most part, could do anything we wanted to get the information. Like when we went into somebody's house, we're not knocking.
Yeah.
The wife and the kids, we weren't hurting. But if you're a full-grown male and we had intel on you, bad stuff was going to happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we couldn't get away with stuff like the Polish Grom. They're different ROEs. I was kind of envious of those guys, but at the same time, I think my biggest struggle was a simple fact that I thrived in that environment. And it was really hard for me to dial it down when I came back. I didn't realize the combination between that and the issues I already had from being a child, that how toxic it was going to be. And my wife, high school sweetheart, I'm laying in bed. I always slip on my back like I was in a coffin. And man, she had a habit of just waking up in the middle of the night talking. Like she wouldn't even remember it. And one night she wakes up and she's like, Jason. I'm like, what? Scared the crap out of me. Because all I could see is the gloss in her eyes. And I've been back a couple months. And we'd already been struggling. She goes, if you had killed anybody, I can't be with you anymore. I just closed my eyes and went back to sleep. I was like, I'm done. That was it for me. It pretty much took everything away from me. And I didn't understand that she just simply couldn't handle that. She didn't understand it. I wasn't giving her anything. I wasn't willing to go to counseling.
Yeah.
that was my biggest issue is I didn't want to go to counseling. I was like, I'm not going to counseling to let somebody tell me who I am because I was stupid and didn't really comprehend it's about tools. So that was my biggest struggle. So ended up committing adultery many, many times. I couldn't forgive myself for that when, she found out and I got a divorce, and I just went off the deep end and drugs and women and partying and everything else. And when I tell you drugs and women, it was a lot of it. I'm talking 3 or 4 times a week, still working. I would party until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, show up at work at 6 a.m. until 2 and repeat. So, and the interesting thing is, I thought I was okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, to me, that's what life was. I didn't really understand that there is another possibility out there for me. And kept having failing relationships. Definitely wasn't doing good as a father. I was trying to do the best I could, but everything was just so toxic that eventually, I started working, doing some security equipment, and that's, I was in bodybuilding, amateur bodybuilding, and I was in getting ready for my first cage fight. I was about 6 months out. And then I was up about 15 feet up in the air, and I broke my arm. I fell.
Yeah, you got a gnarly scar there, bro.
Yeah, it's funny because everybody, like I told you, everybody's like,
that's a war story. What's the war story on that? Yeah.
So disappointing. So disappointing. Come back unscathed, and I fall off a pallet 15 feet up in the air. And I didn't understand it. I lost my identity. As a SEAL, when I got out, I lost my identity, as a potentially future, bodybuilder or cage fighter. And, I had nothing, so I became even more toxic. It took me about a year to recover from this. I was on a machine. They had to do a bone graft and had me on some type of stimulator that makes the bones grow. I didn't do therapy, still doing different types of drugs, popping pills, especially from the VA. They had me so doped up, it was unreal. Yeah. And they had me on one called gabapentin, a nerve pill. And come to find out, it's a really toxic pill.
Yeah.
And back in those days, it was big and green. And I guess I took one and I didn't get the lid all the way back on, put it on top of the fridge. And with this little cat that we had, decided to jump on the fridge and knock it over in the pill while I was sleeping, or on the floor while I was sleeping. And my youngest son, he was still in diapers. He was about 2. And I walk in there and random, he's got this small little Tic Tac box, was green. So he didn't know any better. So he picks it up and he starts chewing on it and he's making this face. And I'm like, yeah. So I walk over there and I see the pills and I tell his mom and I'm like, oh, we got a problem. So I sit down and I say, come here, I said, run over there. And then he started stumbling and I said, run back to me. And then he overshot me and I picked him up and put him in the car seat and rushed him to the hospital, and I'm in tears and we're calling everybody and we think he's going to die. And they start planning on intubating him. Apparently the pill won't kill you, but it just shuts your respiratory system down. So as long as they keep you breathing and it wears off, you'll be okay. So I'm freaking out and we're trying to keep him awake in the hospital. And then my stepdad comes in and he starts talking to him and Brennan wakes up. That was it. He stayed awake the whole time. And I was like, oh. So I go to the VA and I'm like, yo, I want off these pills. I said, I want you to wing me off. I was on tramadol, the gabapentin, a couple others. And they're like, yeah, no. So I had to go to an outside physician, Oriental lady. And she's like, I said, I go on these narcotics from the VA. And she goes, oh, you want narcotics? I said, no. I said, I want to come off of them. And she gave me this cream. Is for arthritis. It's called Voltaren. It's like a Motrin that seeps in and works amazing. And she's like, yeah, take this. And it was 2 weeks, man. I was just jackhammering in bed, just detoxing. And about 3 days into it, I call her. I said, hey, I'm out of this medicine. She's like, what? She goes, that was supposed to last you a month. I said, well, I'm detoxing. I'm hurting really bad. I said, can you please get me another one? She goes, yeah, I'll get you another one. And she got me another one. I finally worked through all of it, and I was smearing it all over me, and it was helping. But
man, detox, bro. I've seen people on detox. Detox, that's terrible, man. Especially when you're detoxing off of, some hard narcotics.
The thing is, I could function well, like on the tramadol. It's not like it's in the opiate family. And I didn't even know it. My mom told me because she could see that I didn't have any drive.
Yeah,
she's like, that that's an opiate, right? I was like, whatever. They wouldn't give me that. It's the VA. They care for us. Needless to say, I still don't use the VA today.
Gotcha.
I will die before I go to the VA. But that's where my life really started changing, is detoxing and taking control of my life and just taking responsibility for what I've done. And I think I gave up because I know now that I'll never be the same. I got a 3-degree offset. I can't do, a lot of the things that I can do. So the mindset is I can't go run. I can't do this. I can't lift, the way I want to. So my life is over. Instead of understanding working through an injury or working around an injury.
Yeah.
Back in, 15 years ago, that wasn't really prominent where it is now. All the therapy that we have available to us. So I just gave up like a lot of people do. And, I look back at it and say, I understand that was just part of my process. God He allowed it to happen to get control of me and say, okay, now I can work in you. Because, had that not happened, I 100% would have got in bodybuilding, 100% would have got into amateur fighting. And because of my drive and stuff, I would have probably never sought him out.
Yeah.
And he had better plans for me.
Guys, if you don't have precious metals, you got to get your hands on some. The world is not a stable place. Our banking system certainly is not a stable place. So it's important to have precious gold and silver on hand. For me, precious gold, precious silver, and also precious lead to be able to protect yourself. But look, if you are not already into this, you need to go to MidasGoldGroup.com. Our friends there are incredible people. They're incredible patriots. They love America, and they have the best resources on precious metals. The owner, James Clark, is a Marine Corps veteran. He's a patriot, and he is my friend also. And they're just incredible people who know this market inside and out. And you could go there, and if you mention my name, Chad Roby Show, you will get free silver. You'll get some free silver, and you can invest in precious metals and have tangible precious metals on hand in a time of need when those financial markets go down. Go to MidasGoldGroup.com and get your precious metals today. Guys, you heard me say before, you will never hear me promote something that I don't use and don't believe in. One of the supporters of this show is BioPro. I am a believer in this product, and offers you a complete growth factor profile. I mean, you're talking about improving your sleep, growing muscle, releasing your own growth hormones in your body, improving your metabolism, just bone density, the way you feel, your overall mood, your sexual desire, your libido, all these just incredible things that come naturally if you could trigger it from your body. As BioPro does that for you. There's a lot of benefits I've heard of from other pro athletes that take this, from special operators. But for me personally, I've definitely noticed the increase in recovery. But the biggest thing I've noticed for me is my sleep. Sleep's important to me. I function well with all the stuff I have to do, from speaking, from writing, to running Mighty Oaks, to doing podcasts like this, and going on international operations. Like, I have to have good sleep in order to be able to function at my highest level. And I was not getting it. I would sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night. It was kind of choppy, and I was doing all kinds of things for years. And as soon as I started taking BioPro, I started getting 8 to 9 hours of solid sleep. That's why I'm just hammering home how much I love this product. The people there are absolutely amazing. They're supporters of our military and first responders. They support Mighty Oaks. And the product is absolutely incredible. You have to try it. Go to BioPro, and if you enter the code BioPro30, you'll get 30% off. That's not my code. I actually don't want a code. I want you to get 30% off. And so enter BioPro30, and you get 30% off. Get yours today.
What was that experience like? I mean, when was it that the Lord grabbed you and was like, hey, it's time to wake up?
Man, I've known God existed as a teenager. I've always felt him. I didn't know anything about the Bible. I didn't know anything about Jesus. I knew he was always there. But I just lived a very earthly life. And after I broke my arm, life was falling apart, like I said. And I had an opportunity to become what they used to call a mud engineer. It's called a drilling foot specialist. You basically work 6 months out of the year knocking down 150 Gs. And I see now how I approached it wrongly, but I see how good and faithful God is. I got on my knees and I said, God, if you just give me this job and help me change my life, I'll give myself to you. Long story short, he made it happen. And here we are, it's only because of him. It was interesting because I remember right before they started doing the background check on me, had a clear background, no tickets or anything, no major tickets anyway. I got into the car on a Saturday and I was going to go get some stuff for barbecue, and I got pulled over, and I was in my youngest son's mother's car. I don't know why I chose to take hers, but I did. And he pulls me over for a brake light or something was out, and give him my license. And he says, your license is suspended. I said, no. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, you're supposed to have an R22, if I recall. It's a specific insurance if you have so many tickets. Well, when I went through my divorce, I was working multiple jobs, so I was having to speed to get from job to job to pay bills, and I'd get ticket after ticket. So they said, well, you need that R22 or whatever it is. And he goes, all what you need to do is you just need to get the insurance, and then they'll reinstate your license. And I'm thinking, this job opportunity, now this happens, I was like, you just don't care, like most people do. So that Monday, I call DPS. I get the R22 through an insurance company. Call DPS. I said, ma'am, this is, how long is it going to take? She goes, 6 weeks. And I knew they were getting ready to start running my background check on Wednesday. And I called him. I said, hey, man, can you hold off? I said, this is what's happening. He goes, I'll give you as long as I can, but, eventually they're going to have to run it or we're going to have to pull out. And I just broke down to that lady. I said, ma'am, this is what's going on. I said, please, can you help me? I said, I will do anything. I said, I'm not a bad person. I explained everything to her. She goes, hold on a minute. And she comes back about 3 minutes later. She goes, your license is reinstated. And I'm just like, oh.
Look out, bro.
So it was a good reminder that God is faithful, but a lot of times we have to step into it and do some work to make things happen. We can't just wait for it to fall into our lap. So, I just continued that relationship with God and fell off the wagon quite a few times on the way, and like we all do, and here I am, he's been so prominent in my life, and there is nothing Jason can do that is good. That's what I can tell you. Anything outside of God with me alone is destructive. He's the only reason I have the life that I have. He's the only reason that I reach out and help people. He's the only reason I run the programs that I do. Yeah. It's all him.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's why I love the work we do here at Mighty Oaks. I gotta plug Mighty Oaks for, any veteran, first responder, or spouses of that are struggling with this kind of destructiveness in their life. Mighty Oaks, that's what we're here for. We send guys and girls to these programs and teach them about recovery, teach them about what it's like to have a relationship with the Lord, and the healing process that can happen when you pursue that relationship.
Yeah, we weren't designed to carry these burdens.
Yeah,
if you go back to the beginning, we were not designed to carry these burdens, and we got to learn to stop being ashamed of all the mistakes we made and understand that there is a better life out there for us. And that's what happened to me. One day I just said, you know what? I was willing to drop everything outside of my kids and say, and go wherever I need to the end of the earth, if you will, to seek out that new life. It's like, I'm done. Yeah. I don't know what's out there. I just know that I'm sick and tired of being here, and anything that I find out here is most likely better than the life, because the life that I'm living has shown me time and time again, year after year, that it can't produce the life that I'm wanting.
Yeah.
And it's comes down to our actions. Our actions, it's like a mathematical formula. Very strategic, right? This habit plus this habit plus this habit will eventually give you, within a specific realm, this result.
Yeah.
So we have to change those habits and understand that anybody is capable of it if you're willing to put that work in.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love the story, man. Amazing story of resilience, which is what this show is all about. But I want to fast forward a little bit. We covered your back, your you're starting to rebuild your relationship, with the Lord, and you're starting to thrive a little bit. So you have Frogman Tactical. When did that kick off?
So I've been training for about 18 years. Been contracting since then, kind of undercover, if you will. I had a buddy when I was in California. I was helping him get a business started. So I was traveling 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And there were some things that happened I didn't like. So I kind of broke it off there. And I'm just like, what am I going to do? This is all I could go back to construction. I could do this. I said, well, I got to feed my family. And one of the guys that was part of that program, he goes, let me help you out. And I didn't know it at the time, but he actually worked with a lot of the major rappers. Like they would send him beats and stuff that they were doing in the studio to see if it was good enough to produce. And I'm like, holy cow. So he started teaching me about photography and videography, and he helped me, set the LLC up and everything. And he just believed in me. And what we did is we started advertising in California. And I put a program together where I would travel there once or twice a month in a specific group, and I would work with them and get them to a very high level of capabilities when it comes to firearm self-defense. And it just grew from there. I had to leave there simply based on the fact that, what I was putting into it just simply wasn't working, financially for me to take care of my family, plus the traveling and stuff like that. So I've been doing that. I think I started that in 2019, Frogman Tactical. And shortly after I started my fitness, which is train like a SEAL, which, everybody was like, why don't you do some, fitness training? I was like, all right, we'll do that. So it's kind of a smaller part of it. And then I was like, well, health is part of it. So I started a supplement line. And last but definitely not least is my nonprofit ministry, Humorous Ministries. That's what I love to do. The guns and stuff are just a vessel to draw people in.
Yeah.
But the primary goal is to be able to talk to them about the Lord. And about 9 years ago, I'll tell you a quick story. 9 years ago, I had a man from Uganda message me. And he was persistent, but he was super nice. And I'm thinking, listen, you better take that fake crap. I can see through you. He was just too nice. I was like, man, people are not this nice. I was like, quit that crap. And I got so sick of him messaging me, asking for support. I said, I just took $500. I said, here, God's blessed me. If I lose it, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he started sending me these pictures of him buying all this food and repairing structures and stuff. And it really touched me. And what hit me was the verse in Scripture where it's talking about the widow going to, if I'm not mistaken, the judge, and her persistence, where the judge is fine, like, whatever, go, fine.
Yeah.
And that hit me. And I've been working with that ministry for about 9 years. We've built churches. We've fed the elderly. Right now, there's about 420 orphan kids that we take care of. Working with another ministry right now. We started going to Uganda a couple of years ago, drilling water wells, buying land so we can get all the kids on that property. They just started building. I didn't get to go this year due to some circumstances. Mostly, I damaged my foot. I was like, I'm not going to be really any help.
Yeah.
Trying to build a house, big structure. So they started building the foundation for the structure so we can get all the kids back to this land. And the next step is to, I guess, the hydroponics. We're bringing that in and showing them how to start cropping and stuff so they can be self-sustaining. And our long-term goal is to get up into Sudan, war-torn Sudan. I don't know how that's going to go, but it's been such a blessing, and I truly believe God allows me to grow just because he knows where we're going to take that money and put it into helping, people that need it.
Yeah. Where can people, support Warhouse Ministries?
So that is just Warhorse Ministries or Warhorse Podcast.
Okay.
I started some podcasts, audios and video on YouTube as well, but you can go to the website and donate there, or you can just reach out on a personal level and do it. Normally, the way they have it right now is if we send any money over a certain amount to Uganda, they freeze the money. because they want to know. We have to show them documentation where it's going. They're like, oh, you're supporting, rebels and stuff. We're like, man, dude, we're with a ministry. Here's our papers. Here's pictures of what we're doing. It's almost like they're very envious or jealous of these ministries over there helping kids. And I don't understand it, but we're constantly having to figure out ways to get the money. So if people donate to the website, I used to do it through my PayPal. I would send PayPal to PayPal, and then we would get that money transferred over there through Western Union or whatever. But we find that Western Union has cut us off. MoneyGram has cut us off. It's a challenge, but God continues to provide. And now what we do is when we send people over there, we go over there with just, certain amount of money, and we allocate that money to certain things that they need, and just let the pastors over there, dish it out and take care of it. And I didn't realize how ungodly America is until I went to Uganda. It is crazy of how they worship and the faith that they have. And there was one time we were in a car, and this one guy looked at me. He had a little red eyes, and he looked at me wrong. I guess I felt that way. Maybe he was just trying to figure out what we were doing. And Fred is the pastor. I said, Fred, in America, if I didn't like you or the color of your skin, this is the word that they would call you. And I said the N-word. I said, here in Uganda, if you don't like someone like me, what would you call them? He goes, what do you mean? I don't understand. And he goes, we don't talk like that. He goes, we're all raised to love. We don't speak like that. And I was like, oh man, we were so screwed up. We're such a screwed up nation, It's unfortunate, but I wish every American could do something like that one time, just to go over there, and it would break your heart.
Yeah.
It would really show you how selfish we are as individuals, and we don't mean to. We're only doing what we know to do. You think about it, we're born into it.
Yeah.
Since Adam and Eve, the destruction of the world is set in, and we're just simply born into what we know. It's remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, amazing stories, bro.
Thank you.
Amazing story of resilience, redemption, transformation. I mean, no doubt listeners can hear your experience and learn some lessons about resiliency. So I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, super pumped. Super phenomenal story. I appreciate your openness and your willingness to share. We got some gifts for you, man, before you take off. Yeah, I'll show you the gifts here. So this Gators box is empty, so don't be fooled. But we'll send you a pair of Gators. Gators is a sponsor for us. I know from the tactical community. Yep. Gators is phenomenal, American made, phenomenal company. Steel frames, lifetime warranty on their frame. So we'll get you a copy. We'll get you a pair. You just tell me which one you want, and then this is from Midas Gold Group.
Sweet.
Yeah, this is from Midas Gold Group. So James Clark is a veteran, the owner of Midas Gold Group. So he provides a coin to our guests. So
awesome.
We're big into believing that
that's awesome. Thank you so much.
If the world fails, you need gold and silver to be able to barter for things. So
absolutely,
we like to have that. And then I got a little Mighty Oaks, of course, swag bag. It's got a hat in here. Got some shirts. Got nice. Chad's book, the Mighty Oaks Founders book. I know Chad. Story from Saving the Seas. Phenomenal story about how they went to save one man and ended up saving 17,000 people. So phenomenal story. A couple shirts. We have our 3 little books, which are great, honestly, for our community. Path to Resilience, Truth About PTSD and Not the Solution. Phenomenal books for people that you might encounter, and you might just throw it to them and say, hey, man, it seems like you're struggling. Why don't you read this book? So anyways, man, I appreciate you being on the show. Again, you guys check out Frogman Tactical. Check out Jason Pike. How can they find you on socials?
Instagram is frogman_tactical_USA.
Okay.
YouTube's Frogman Tactical. Facebook, that's pretty much all this. I got like a Twitter, but I'm never on that. You can go to the website, frogmantactical.com, trainlikeaseal.net, or Warhorse. I think it's Warhorse Ministries or Warhorse Podcast. I believe it's podcast, is that ministry website.
Awesome. Cool. You guys heard it. Follow Jason. We'll see you guys next time.
Have a good day and God bless.
What's up, guys? Sean here, one of your hosts at Resilient. Thank you for watching the show. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any bonus content and future episodes. We have some amazing guests that share their story of resilience, and you won't want to miss it.